1, 2, 3. Yes, good afternoon, students. Now I want to explain to you the relationship between total utility and marginal utility. Now, total utility is made up by the sum of the marginal utility. So, for example, this is the total utility, okay? And if the total utility is 0, it is because the marginal utility, there is no marginal utility, or there is no consumption. There is no consumption. And when you consume 1 unit, therefore your total utility will be equal to the marginal utility of 50. So total utility and marginal utility are equal at 1 unit of consumption. Now, if you consume a second unit, okay, total utility will be equal to the first marginal utility plus the second marginal utility. So which is 50 plus 45 will give you 95. So 95 will be here. Okay. Now, if you do not know the marginal utility, and you are asked to find the marginal utility using the total utility. So what you do is that you subtract the unit 2 total utility from the unit 3 total utility. So if you take 135 minus 95, so that's going to give you 0 and 4. That's going to give you 40. So therefore the marginal utility here will be 40. Okay, it will be 40. So if, again, what is the marginal utility at the 4th unit of output? Again, you take 171.5 minus 135. Okay, so 171.5 minus 135. Okay, so that is going to give you 5.6. Okay, so it's going to give you 3. So 36.5. So you're going to have here 36.5. Okay, 36.5. Okay, so now you know the marginal utility, but you do not know the total utility at the 5th unit of consumption. So how do you find the total utility knowing the marginal utility for the 4th and the 5th unit? Okay, so what you do now in order to find the total utility for the 5th unit of consumption, so you're going to take the 171.5 of the 4th unit of consumption, 171.5 plus the 28.5 marginal utility of the 5th unit of consumption. So 171.5 plus 28.5. Okay, so you're going to get 0, 9, 10, 9, 10. You're going to have 200. So you're going to have here 200. Okay, 200. So this is how you find marginal utility using total utility, or how you find total utility using marginal utility. But remember that the sum of the marginal utility makes up the total utility. Now, looking at this table, at what rate is total utility increasing? At what rate is total utility increasing? Total utility is increasing at a diminishing rate. How do we know that? We know that because the total utility, which is made up of the marginal utility, is decreasing increasing, okay, or is diminishing. So since the marginal utility is diminishing, the total utility also got to diminish, okay, because the total utility is made of by the marginal utility. Okay. Now, how many units will a rational consumer consume? How many units will a rational consumer consume? Now, who is a rational consumer? A rational consumer is the one who considers all available information before taking an action. What does that mean? That means that a rational consumer is the one who compares or weighs benefits and marginal benefits with marginal cost before an action. Okay? If the marginal benefit exceeds the marginal cost, the rational consumer will take the action. And if the marginal cost exceeds the marginal benefit, the rational consumer will not take the action. So in this case, how many units will a rational consumer purchase? Okay, this will depend on the comparison between the marginal utility, okay, and the marginal cost. So whenever the marginal utility is higher than the marginal cost, the consumer will continue consuming until that marginal utility is lower than the marginal cost. However, with that being said, at negative marginal utility, the consumer will stop consuming because the consumer, even if the product is free, okay, even if the product is free, or even if there is no marginal cost, so the consumer will stop consuming because the consumer will not be feeling well or comfortable. Okay, so again, how many units will the consumer purchase? This depends on whether the marginal benefit is higher than the marginal cost. And whenever the marginal cost exceeds the marginal benefits, the consumer will undertake the action and consume more. And whenever the marginal cost exceeds the marginal benefit, the consumer will stop, will not consume. In other words, the consumer will stop consuming when the marginal benefit equals the marginal cost. Okay, so is it possible that a rational consumer will not purchase any units of the product represented by these data? Yes, it is possible that a rational consumer will not purchase any units represented by this data, because from the outset, okay, the rational consumer's marginal cost may be higher than his or her marginal benefit, and therefore the rational consumer will not purchase any unit of these represented by these data. For example, if the marginal cost were to be 55 or higher than 50, the rational consumer, upon comparing the marginal cost of higher than 50 with the marginal utility of 50, the rational consumer will decide not to buy any, because right from the outset, the marginal cost exceeds the marginal benefit. So therefore, a rational consumer may not purchase any of these units of product represented by these data. Thank you.